Hello and welcome to a new special edition covering the main stories of the day here on Nile TV International. And His Excellency the President returned home after an African tour during which he paid a visit to Uganda on Wednesday. Earlier, the President and his Ugandan counterpart Yoweri Museveni asserted that intensified coordination and active cooperation in relation to water and the Nile River is necessary at a bilateral meeting held at the Presidential Palace in Entebbe, Uganda. The two presidents voiced commitment to sustainable management of water and strong bonds among Nile Basin countries. According to a joint communique issued following the meeting, President Sisi congratulated the Ugandan president on his re-election, affirming that this reflects the Ugandan people's confidence in his wise leadership. The head of state stressed Egypt's high appreciation for the distinguished ties binding both countries and expressed Egypt's keenness to enhance trade ties and sustainable investment partnership that serves mutual interests of both countries. The two leaders also discussed many African issues of common concern. Of course, earlier, President Sisi had attended the Africa-France Partnership Summit, the Africa-France Forward Summit in Nairobi, Kenya, with the hosting of Kenyan President William Ruto and, of course, the attendance of French President Emmanuel Macron, who was earlier here in Egypt and received by the President. With us now live over the phone is Ambassador Ahmed Haggag, and Ambassador Haggag is the former Assistant Secretary of the Organization of African Unity, the OAU. Mr. Ambassador, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening. How are you?
Sir, let's start first with the Uganda visit. How do you see the significance of this visit, the importance, the timing of this visit by the President to Uganda, and talking with the Ugandan President on many African issues of mutual concern, and of course many issues related to the Nile River waters and the Nile Basin issue?
Egypt and Uganda has all the relationship, not only for previous decades, but in several centuries. I remember, I would like to mention here an anecdote I heard from President Museveni himself, that President Museveni is very proud being a big rancher and have a big farm for cultivating cows and other animals. And he referred that the cows of Kenya could be seen on the surface of many Egyptian ancient temples. He wanted to show that the Nilotic part of Uganda has always have a relationship with old Egyptian civilization. This is bypassing, yeah.
Yes.
But the relationship during this century, remember Egypt participated in building of oil barrage in Kenya, which provides Kenya and neighboring countries with electricity. And Egypt is giving funds for several projects in Kenya, in Uganda, mainly fighting a dangerous, in Lake Victoria, dangerous spread of the Nile, which made almost a wall, a thick wall, impenetrable for against fishing or
yes.
Egypt spent several millions of dollars in making a big drain in order to demolish this. Every year we have to do that every year. But anyhow,
right.
Egypt also is giving a lot of scholarships for Kenyan police to fight terrorism, and also many, you remember President Museveni paid a special visit to Egypt in August 25 and he intensified and tried to lure many Egyptian business people to invest in projects in his country. He succeeded to a great extent. But
Mr. Ambassador, the importance of the commitment, the Cairo's commitment and Kampala's commitment to sustainable management of water and the strong bonds among the Nile Basin countries. How do you see the significance of this agreement on that specific vital issue for both countries?
President Museveni and his country, Uganda, is an important country in East African region and also an important country in the Nile Basin. As you know, Egypt established a fund to finance projects in Nile
Basin countries. Yes.
And during this visit of President Sisi, he offered that this fund could contribute in establishing and finalizing certain projects in Uganda. You know, this Egypt, with the Nile water, Egypt is not against building dams in other countries, but is determined to defend its rights and against any unilateral decision in order to damage Egypt's interests. In this regard, I would like to mention the big dam which Egypt is building in Tanzania, the Nyerere Dam. So we are not against any Nile countries benefiting from its water, but not to affect Egypt and Sudan interests.
Correct. Mr. Ambassador, the Africa-France Partnership or Forward Summit, how did you see the results, the outcome of that summit, attended by, of course, President Sisi and hosted by Mr. William Ruto, the Kenyan president, and the French President Emmanuel Macron?
I would like to mention I have been serving as Egypt ambassador to Kenya for 5 years. And so I know very well how the Kenyan people look to Egypt, which supported the people for liberation from the British colonialism. The talks which President Sisi held with President Ruto was very decisive in furthering the relation between the two countries. We both are members, together with Uganda, of the treaty establishing the African economic free zone, and also for the sub-regional, which increased a lot Egyptian exports and imports from Africa. So economically, I think we are doing very well in both countries, Kenya and Uganda. And in this successful France-Africa conference was the most successful conference held by French and African countries. Before, the French concentrated only on French-speaking countries, but they decided to expand their relationship to all Africa in order to show that they are not only interested in language-speaking countries.
So how do you see, Mr. Ambassador, indeed the horizons of the future cooperation between France and Africa? And it seemed that the French President, Mr. Macron, was luring and trying to attract Africa to have more, trade ties with France at the expense of, say, the Chinese or the Americans.
I think President Macron, in his statement, was very decisive in saying that France will earmark $25 billion, euros, which is more in dollars, for financing French projects in different African countries, including English-speaking countries. And he mentioned that France will give $700 million expanding the Mombasa port, which is the biggest port in Kenya. So he, as an alternative, also he deviated from the traditional sorts of summit conferences, government to government. In this case, he invited hundreds of sports people, cultural people, actors, film actors, and so on, in order to give the people-to-people cooperation between France and the African people.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, one final point. Egypt, again, being a voice for the voiceless, a voice for the South, and a voice for Africa. The President, in his speech in Nairobi, mentioned some very important points, including that there will be no peace without development and no development without peace, and also reiterating Egypt's call for an overhaul of the global financial system, which favors developed countries at the moment at the expense of developing countries, and warning, of course, of the negative repercussions of the US-Israel-Iran war on Africa and on poorer countries in the world, and asking, of course, for more equality and more justice when it comes to trade with Africa, and so your comment on that specific point, Mr. Ambassador, Egypt again being a voice for playing its historic role as a voice for its continent.
President Sisi mentioned this point about debt issue, not only in Africa but in European conferences. He participated in behalf of African region, and many African countries and South countries are indebted with big finances to European Union and big international financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF. So those two big institutions, together with European countries, have to look in the possibility of canceling part of the debt, and also because this debt is not only a burden for stability and economic stability, but the mere servicing of this debt is hindering any sustainable development in those countries. So those institutions, and he mentioned that to the Secretary General of the United Nations, that the World Bank and IMF has to do more in attacking this debt burden, and specialized agencies of the United Nations could render a big support to African Renaissance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your time and your insight. That was Ambassador Ahmed Haggag, the former Assistant Secretary for the Organization of African Unity, the OAU, and Egypt's former ambassador in Nairobi, serving there for 5 years. Ambassador Haggag gave us his insight on the President's 3-day tour, which took him to Nairobi, Kenya, attending the Africa-France Forward Summit, and where also the President on Wednesday visited Uganda. So thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. And please don't go far, because in some 18 minutes from now, we'll be back with a comprehensive news update and the latest in politics, business, and sports in Panorama News on Nile TV International.